All right, friends, on the left-hand side, we have the Viotek GNV34DBE2. This is a 34-inch Quad HD ultra-wide display, 4001 contrast ratio, 144 Hertz, support for FreeSync and G-Sync. It has a 1500R curve, so it's a more aggressive curve than the monitor on the right-hand side. On the right, we have the Lenovo ThinkVision P34W-20. Now, I've done a full review on the monitor on the right-hand side, the ThinkVision. That's a business professional's monitor, right? That's designed for people who are in the office. So it has niceties like a built-in KVM switch, picture-in-picture capability, so you can connect two different sources and then show them both at the same time. It also has this like virtual two displays in one, so you can actually make Windows, I don't know about Mac, but you can make Windows think there are two displays here, but it's just one. And it has just a 1000R curve, which I shouldn't say just, but it's a less aggressive curve than what's on the Viotek. Another key distinction is that the ThinkVision has an IPS panel and the Viotek has a VA panel. Now the VA panel is going to be better at representing blacks and contrast overall, plus it has the high refresh rate, whereas this IPS panel in particular has just a 60 Hz refresh rate, but there are some IPSs with more. Behind it is my Razer Raptor, you can't see it, but behind that I have a 27-inch Quad HD Razer Raptor with an IPS display, and it's really, really nice. But anyway, back to the ThinkVision, it's, like I said, not geared towards gamers, so it doesn't have that high refresh rate. But I did try gaming on it, and I talk about that in that full review, so check it out. But I wanted to put these two side by side before I get into the full review of the Viotek, just because you gotta know what else is out there, and I am fortunate enough to have both in the shop right now. Both are from their manufacturers, but the Lenovo is gonna be going back right away. So I'm out of time with it, so this is my last opportunity to do a side by side. Now, what I can tell you from the short period of time that I've had them side by side is that for me, I prefer the Viotek, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. The biggest thing I wish the Viotek had that this Lenovo ThinkVision has is all the flexibility for ergonomics. The Viotek with the stand that comes with it, not the built-in stand, right? It comes with a stand. The stand itself is two pieces of metal, so there's an arm and a stand, and you can adjust the monitor. You can tilt it this way, right? But you can't, so I'll just show you. You can tilt it this way. All right, you gotta be a little careful with the cables apparently. And you could rotate it that way a little bit, but that's it, right? So it doesn't have, you can't tilt it vertical like I have with this Dell that's behind it. Boy, I did something here that really upset it. All right, well, I'll turn that back on in a moment. Whereas the ThinkVision can do so much more in terms of ergonomics. It can go both up and down. You can rotate it upward like that really easily. And you can, but you can't rotate it portrait like I have with that Dell that's behind it. So that's the one thing I wish this Viotek had, but unfortunately it's not there. Now, if we zoom in more on the Viotek. So the Viotek with this more aggressive angle, this curvature, it's a little bit more immersive. Now I could just imagine a 49-inch with this curvature or even a 38 being just perfect as a standalone display. But in my office, the setup that I like to roll with is the 34-inch ultra-wide with a portrait 27-inch and then a regular 27-inch on the right-hand side. But of course, you could do a horizontal landscape with all three monitors, and it would just be like the Batcave, right? It's pretty darn cool. So if you were to go with something bigger, you may not have the desk space for it, right? All right, folks, this is the on-screen display where you can make a number of different adjustments. First, starting with the input source. Now, there is no automatic input detection, so you just have to be deliberate about which input you're trying to pull from. That might be because of the picture-in-picture mode. We'll get to that in a moment. You can adjust the brightness, black level, and contrast, color settings. Now, here within color settings is the option to change the picture mode, and there are a number of different picture modes to choose from. I keep it in standard, but there's photo, movie, game, FPS, and RTS, which you might want to play with if you're really into one game over the other, but it does mean you have to go into the settings to make those changes. Then you have the picture quality where you can turn on things like response time, overdrive, noise reduction, super resolution, and luminous control. I haven't played too much with these, but I will before I do my final review. You can change the aspect ratio and the LED mode, audio for the audio pass-through, Multi-window, this is where you get into picture-in-picture. So you can select from another source and have that display on the screen and then adjust its position, not too dissimilar from that ThinkVision display. And then you have your on-screen display options where you can make changes there. And then finally, under Other, which maybe should just be called Advanced or something, this is where you can turn on adaptive sync, so FreeSync or G-Sync, and then HDR on or off, which is going to be important for some people, not so much for me in this case. So, all right, folks, this is that on-screen menu that I promised. Now you have 5 buttons at the bottom. One is power, so don't press that if you're interested in getting into the menu system. You press the menu system right here, and then right below are menu options. You can go back into the menu, so one step out, or you can go up and down. And I do get the up and down confused because they're just so hard to read, these little arrows. But anyhow, so in here you do have some control over the monitor where you can control brightness, contrast, volume for the built-in speakers. Now I didn't cover the built-in speakers a moment ago because they're not good. So I just stopped using them and I went straight to my own discrete speakers. There's an advanced settings option where you can control the contrast with a dynamic contrast. You can also override to drop the timing down, but I didn't notice a huge difference in the response time. There's also different color presets, so RGB, DCI-P3. Now, out of the box, it was set to DCI-P3. You can see that the colors pop a lot more when you're in DCI-P3 mode. Well, hopefully you can see that, but the brightness goes down tremendously. There's also BT.709, and then your classic neutral, warm, cool, and then custom, which gives you a little bit more control. Okay, so scenario mode out of the box, it was in panel native. I pushed it to image creation because I felt it was brighter. Brightness was a problem with this device for me out of the box. There's also HDR10 support. It's Windows, so HDR not really amazing unless you're watching HDR content, which I don't do a whole lot of. So I messed with it, turned it on, and fiddled around, but ultimately I wasn't super impressed. Now, this is where it starts to get wild. So you can select your input. There's an automatic mode, so you don't have to be explicit about your primary input. There's also daisy chaining, so you can connect other types of ThinkVision monitors to it. Here is that eKVM that I mentioned, so you can bring your keyboard and mouse with you when you change inputs. So that's just awesome. I'm not sure you guys are familiar with KVM switches. They're not as popular as they used to be, but very cool stuff. And then this is where you can also piggyback onto which source. USB charging and super USB-C charging, which I honestly didn't bother trying to use. I just hesitate. Okay, so Ethernet is an option through USB-B, USB-B making an appearance, and USB-C. And the most wild part, this is the picture-in-picture option. So first you have True Split. That's what I was talking about, where you can separate the monitor in two. So if you turn that on, you get to simulate having 2 displays through one single cable. Picture-in-picture. So picture-in-picture is what I'm using right now. And before I turn it off, let me come down here and go to Swap. So I can change what's the primary and what's the secondary. Let me go back in here. See how I get confused with the up and down? All right, and then I can also go to source and I can choose where to put it. I can change the position, and then I can just go here to foreground and I can choose which input to make that picture-in-picture. I'm gonna go ahead and you can also adjust the audio source too, which I totally forgot about and just noticed. Okay. I'm going to turn it off, and now my screen will refresh and it'll go back to just being my primary PC. And as far as other options go, you can change the language, you can change the timeout and the positioning and the transparency. And that is it. Making a final decision about these two monitors really comes down to your use case. If you primarily want something that's going to be better for gaming, you have to go with the Viotek Ultrawide. If you're looking for something that's completely work-oriented, the ThinkVision is the way to go. You have those added features like the eKVM, the picture-in-picture, the split screen. All of that is going to be better in a work environment and really has minor application in the gaming space. You know, for example, if you want to connect a PS4 and a PS5 to this display, the ThinkVision, you could. But that's not an optimal situation because you only play one game at a time, right? Now, on the other hand, if you're looking for something that's going to be kind of a balance between the two, let's say 50-50 split in terms of importance between a monitor for gaming and a monitor for work, I'd still lean Viotek. Now, if, however, that split is like 60-40 or greater in favor of work, I would recommend the ThinkVision, because even though it's 60 hertz, meaning a maximum refresh rate of 60, that could be perfectly fine for most gamers. It does depend on the type of games that you like to play. You know, for me, if I'm playing a game like Diablo, I don't need 144 frames per second. I'd be fine with 60. But if I also enjoy games like Fortnite, which thank God I don't, but if I did, then I wouldn't be making videos, I'd be gaming. But if I did, then I'd want to lean towards the Viotek. And I do find the colors better on the Viotek, but you get a really nice clean picture of the ThinkVision as well. And it's just hard to come across in these videos. So the best thing you can do for yourself is try to test these out. Try to find either a vendor that has a good return policy like Best Buy or Amazon, or try to get your hands on one directly by going into a store and checking them out. It's just that selection is not very good inside of retailers when it comes to monitors. Okay, I hope you found this helpful. Thanks to both Viotek and Lenovo for providing these for review. They are going back, so don't ask me to send them to you. Some people do that. Sorry, if I could, I would, but I can't. Cheers.